Welcome back, CSC103, to your first exercise using Tinkercad and working with 3D. Now that you created your Tinkercad account and you joined your class and you put in the course code, you could create a new design. And that's what you're going to do first. You're going to click on this button, create a new design. And when you come in here, it'll give you a random name to start with, which you can change. So go right here and call it 7A. We're going to call this exercise 7A. And it's going to be really exciting. We're going to call it Cube with 3 holes. Cube 3 holes. That's our exciting exercise. 7A, cube 3 holes. I'll hit enter, and when I look into your account, since you joined the class, I'll be able to see that. Now, this is our work plane here, and we talked about a grid, and one of the first things you're going to do with this grid is go down where it says Edit Grid. Now, I'm going to show you a couple things because I'm going to show you with a mouse and also on my trackpad. I'm on a Mac, but I'll show you what to do with a mouse and how to navigate around it. You should be able to figure it out. My daughter in 11th grade figured it out pretty quick. She was doing it on a Chromebook, and she figured it out and it wasn't a problem. So it shouldn't be a problem, but I'll try to show you different ways to navigate around here and to move, because it's hard to show when you're just watching a video. If you're not there and I'm not watching you do it, I'm watching your fingers and things like that. But anyway, let's edit our grid. We're going to make our grid 100 by 100. We're just going to make it a little smaller. Now it's going to be millimeters, but don't worry too much about that right now. And double click in here to highlight it and put in 100. If you just try to highlight it, it doesn't do anything. You have to double click. So I'm going to double click here and 100. And I'll just say update grid. So it'll be a little bit smaller now. So I'll zoom in, and it's about half the size. And you can see there's kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like 10 blocks across, 10 blocks back. And that's important because we want to put a ruler in the middle so we can have our 0, 0 point there, the way other 3D programs do. Other 3D programs will have our X going across, our Y going that way, and our Z axis coming out, kind of like this, up and down, is going to be our Z-axis. So we want to follow that, even though they don't really identify that on this plane. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go over to my ruler and just drag it out here. Now you could drag it anywhere, and this little circle here, I'm going to try to drag it in the middle. Now I mentioned counting over, so if you count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and make sure that you're 5 in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you're right about there, and you could zoom in. Now here's what I'm going to do to zoom in. On my laptop, I could use 2 fingers, or you could pinch, and I could zoom in forward and back like that. Or if I grab my mouse, I have my mouse here too. If I roll my scroll wheel, I could zoom in and zoom out with my scroll wheel. So I'm going to do that, and you can grab this and kind of move it around, and it should lock into place in the middle there. And there's a little button here, and it says use midpoint. And if it says use midpoint, click on it so we use the midpoint. So do that. Now if it says use endpoint, if you hover over here and it says use endpoint, don't use that because we want to use the midpoint. So if it says use midpoint, click on it and be done with it. And if it says use endpoint, leave it alone. You're good, because we're going to use our midpoint, and we're going to use that to kind of position things. Now you don't have to use that, but I think it's good to know where things are on your plane. So that's the first thing, just putting your ruler there. And again, our Y is going this way, our X is going across, and our Z is up and down, coming up from this mat that we have here, this grid that we have here. And we have some things over here where we're going to be able to look at things. We're going to be able to go top, look at it from the top, from the front, there's from the bottom. We could go back up and kind of move all around. There's from the front, which just looks like a line from the side. Everything will just look like a line from the side. And this is home. So they have a home view here, so if you ever get lost, just go back to your home view, and then I'm going to zoom in. I'm just using 2 fingers to zoom in, or you could use your mouse and roll your scroll wheel. And they also down here have switch to flat view, orthographic. Now if you switch to flat view, it's just all very flat, and you won't see any depth. And we don't have to worry about that yet. I'll leave it in this view for now, the perspective view as they call it. So this is perspective view. And if you're in perspective view, it'll say switch to orthographic. And if you're in orthographic, it'll say switch to perspective. So anyway, that's where we're at right now. This isn't that exciting yet because we don't even have anything on here. But we're going to go over here to our shapes, and we're just using basic shapes. And I'm just going to grab a cube, and I'm going to drag it on here, anywhere. Just drag it on. There it is, and just let go. And this shape thing will come up first. Now, before we start using sliders on here, I want us to use some of these numbers that are here on the grid. So let's move this thing, this little arrow here, hide the shapes panel, because I'm not putting any shapes on here right now. So I'm just going to move that out, and it'll move this shape thing over. And I could even close this up. I don't have to do anything with this shape thing. I actually want to move around here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And if I'm using my laptop, I can hold Control and then Shift and kind of move it over. It's kind of like using the space bar and grab it, where you could kind of grab it and move back and forth. You can also do that with your mouse if you hold down on your scroll wheel and you move back and forth. I'm using my mouse now. I'm using my mouse and just holding the button down of my middle mouse wheel and kind of doing that. So that's kind of just moving it back in my view. So I can kind of see things a little bit right now. And the other thing you could do, if you use your right mouse button, you can do this and move all around like that. Now, don't do it too much, but I'm just moving a little bit. Just go back to where you were. And that's with my mouse. Now, if I put my mouse down, if I use Control and then I use my trackpad and hold down, I can do this, where I'm holding one thumb down and I'm moving my finger up and down. And you guys know how to do this. But anyway, I'm using Control as my modifier key to do this. And if I add Shift to it, I think I have to start over again. But if I add Shift, then I could kind of move up and down when I add my finger to it. So those are the main things to note. It's basically zooming in and zooming out, which you can do with your trackpad, you can do with your mouse wheel. You can hold down your mouse wheel, or you can do Control Shift and move around like this on your trackpad. Or if you right click on your mouse or just hold Control on your trackpad or on your laptop, you can do this and kind of move in this 3D space. And if you ever get completely lost and you're like, oh wow, how do I get back to where I was? Just go to Home. That'll kind of put you back at home, and then you could zoom in a little bit more. And again, I'll go over this way. Now I can't scroll sideways. That's why I have to hold down Control, then Shift, and then I'm going to move my whole kind of screen over a little bit. And I want to see these things here because it's important that you look at these. This cube that we have here, now we could have set this up in here. I have a height, which is our Z height of the cube. I have a width, which is the X width of the cube, and this is our Y. So in all 3D programs, typically you measure a shape by their X, Y, and Z. The Z is 20, the X is 20, and the Y is 20. Now that's the physical size of that cube right now. And it's a cube because they're all the same. Now, to change these, you could go right on the numbers, and I want you to change these. So go in here and make this 10, and then hit Enter. And then go into this one and make that 10 and hit Enter. And then go on this one and make it 10 and hit Enter. And you might be saying, well, what are these other things? I see other numbers here. These green things are actually your positioning. And what we want to do is we want to position this at the center. Now you can physically grab this and move it over to the center, but I want you to get used to using your coordinates because that's how you would use it in other 3D programs. So I'm more concerned about the XY right now, not as much as your Z in terms of where it is up and down, because I think it's flat on the mat, and we'll check that. But what I want to do is go over here. This is your Y, and I'm going to put in 0 because this will be where the center of this cube is. So I'm going to click here and put 0. And then I'm going to go here where it says 28, and I'll put 0 here. Now your numbers may be different, so now it's right in the middle. Now if it looks like it's off the ground, let's just check this out. Let's view from the front and make sure it's orthographic. So I'll switch to orthographic. Now it's floating off the ground. That's because it's saying it's 10 off the ground. Now if the middle of this is 10 high, so it's like halfway off the ground. So where do you think it needs to go to be on the ground? It's too far up. Its middle is at 10. So we need to make this half the size. So we can go here and just make that 5. So we'll just move it down. Even if you didn't do that, or if you're like, oh, I don't know what number to put in here, they have this little arrow here. So you can kind of grab that and see what it does. But again, it's important that I'm viewing from the front here to do that. I'm going up. Now it's at 15. Now I'm going down, and now I can see at 5. It's a little bit up. It's at 6. I'll go here and I'll put it at 5. And now it's in the right position. And I'll go to my home view, and I'll zoom in here, and I'll go back to perspective so it looks a little bit better, and that's what I want. Again, I have my Z, which is the height of the cube, which is 10. The width of the cube is 10, and the length of the cube is 10. X, Y, Z. and it's at 5 off the ground because we're measuring the middle point. And if it's 10 inches high, or if it's 10 millimeters high, 5 is the middle point off the ground, so it's still sitting on the mat. All right, that wasn't too exciting. What we're going to do next is we're going to put 3 holes through it. That's why we're calling it Cube 3 holes. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a cylinder. So we're going to bring our shapes back out, and I'm going to bring a cylinder out, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to drop it there. And I'll put this away. Now there's my big giant cylinder. Now I'm going to just zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to hold my control key and just kind of make it so I can kind of see it a little bit more. And if you can't see all the numbers, some of them overlap a little, so I'll just bring it down a little bit so you can kind of see the 3 blue ones again and the 2 green ones that we need to see, or there's 3 green ones. One of them might be hidden right now under that cube or something. But anyway, what I want to do here is I want to change this thing to be like 5 by 5. I'll keep it 20 high, so I'm going to leave that alone, except over here I want to change it, and I'm going to make that 5. So I'm going to make that 5, and you can see it gets squashed. That's just Y is getting squashed. And this one, now these are both 20, so it's kind of confusing, but it's this one here. I'm going to make that one 5. And now it's a thin cylinder. It's still very tall, which is fine. That's okay. And now I want to put this at 0 to the middle. And now I can see my other one over here, and I could click on that. And if it goes away, just click on the shape again. And actually, what I accidentally clicked on was the green. I want to click on this where it says -7. I'm going to go here and make that 0. And that's going to put my cylinder right on top. Right in the middle of it, it'll go right through it. And I could leave that at 10, that's okay. And actually that's perfect, because if it's up 10, that means the middle is at 10 right now. So that's okay because it's 20. So I think that's sitting on the ground right now, so that's okay. This thing should be half of what its size is, and that just like our other one was 5 and it was 10. So our cube was 10 and that thing was at 5, so that's fine. Now what we're going to do here is just let this thing kind of stick up in the air, and we're going to give it a color of hole. Look at that. Change it to hole. That means it's going to be like nothing, like negative space. So I'm going to do that, and it'll look kind of transparent. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select. This is still selected. Now, even if you click off, you could click off, and I'm going to click on this with my left mouse, or I'm doing it on my trackpad, and then hold Shift. Remember, in Gravit, we can highlight multiple things by holding Shift. I'm going to hold Shift and then click on this. So now I have 2 objects selected. It even says Shapes 2 here. I don't know if it'll show what the shapes are. It doesn't, but it says there's 2 shapes selected. So my cylinder and my cube are selected. And if I go here and I group them, watch what happens. It turns that hole shape into like negative space, and it makes a hole. And how I just look down the hole there. There I could look down the hole by just kind of moving I'm holding Control and just kind of scrolling on my trackpad. And again, if you use your right mouse button, I'll go and use my right mouse button. I'll grab my mouse here, and there it is. I can move my right mouse button and move it around, and there's the hole. So we just put a hole in there. Again, not very exciting, but we're learning how to align things. We're learning how to do, that's actually a Boolean operation, like subtract, like we did with Gravit. We took a shape and we subtracted to make a hole there. We're just going to make 2 more holes. One that's going this way. That one's going along the z-axis, meaning it's going up and down. It's following the z-axis of the cube. We're going to make one that follows the y-axis and one that follows the x-axis. And I think what I'll do is I'll take a break here. Not that this is that complicated, but I'll take a break here, and I think it auto-saves for you, so I don't think you have to save. So you don't have to do anything else right now. And what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll finish off. We'll just put 2 more cylinders through here, finish it off, and I'll show you how to submit the file. And again, this is just kind of a first practice file. I know it's not very exciting making a cube with holes in them, but this is just our first practice file, making sure you can set up the account in Tinkercad, making sure you're in the classroom and all that. And then I'll go and look at your cube and make sure it has 3 holes in there, making sure you could align it in the middle and change the grid and use these numbers here. You know, if we were in Blender, this would be driving you crazy to do it. Hopefully this is a little easy kind of start for you to get going, and that I'm not going too fast and you could follow things. So we're going to come back for part 2, and we're just going to finish it off.